Alright everybody, welcome to another episode of Completion Critiques. Doing something a little bit differently with kind of recording slash streaming a little intro before these parts get cut up. So if you're new, each week we review the completion and achievement rates of games to see what we can learn about how player motivation and player behavior dictated whether or not this game really succeeded among its fans. And I'm setting up for the Patreon for people to vote for which episodes I'd like to see in what order. So for this week, it is Resident Evil 7 and Doom 2016, the Battle of the Soft Boots. And if you'd like to catch these shows live, we do them Tuesdays starting around 4:30 ET. But with that, let's get to the games this week. And hopefully, YouTube decides to pick things up, which it does not look like it did. Perfect. Well, again, the beauties about being able to edit this stuff is that nobody will see this in the recorded version. Now, why are you not giving it to me? There we go. Alright. So, with that, let's begin with... We're going to be actually beginning with Doom 2016. There we go. So, Doom 2016 is first because, well, it came out before RE7. And the reason why I picked the two games this week is that both are from franchises that kind of fell out of popularity. Whereas Evil did with RE6, Doom 2016, or Doom did with Doom 3. But both had very stellar soft reboots, which led to some very popular sequels with Doom Eternal and RE8, which we'll probably have to cover on a future show. But the question remains, did these two games that kind of restarted their franchises do well enough to motivate fans and newcomers to check them out? So let us go to Doom over here. There we go. And I have not had a chance to really look at both these games in depth, but I feel like there is going to be churn, but I do think there is going to be a higher clear rate. But we'll see if I'm proven right or wrong. Hey, Pony. So, right off the bat, they did lose about 17, well, we'll round it up to 18% of kind of their, 17% of their fan base pretty much before they even finished the first mission. I'm honestly surprised about that. That the opening of Doom is probably one of the most standout openings of an action game we've seen in some time. And to lose that amount of people so quickly, yep, it is very shocking. I'm really at a loss for this one. Like, did people just say, I'm going to start Doom, this metal music's too loud, quit? Now, it also, I think, depends on what difficulty level they started on. But yeah, this is one of those points where, again, this is one of the reasons why I like to do this show, is that it lets us kind of see just who actually bought a game can be counted on as fans of the franchise and fans of the developer. So we know that about 17.2% of the people who bought Doom 2016, they left before they even got... Did they even quit before they even got the shotgun? Or maybe they got the shotgun, they did the whole, cocking of it, and then they just said, well, that's all I needed from this game, and they left. But, yeah, I am really surprised that they quit that quick into Doom. I mean, you kind of did see everything the game had to offer in terms of its core gameplay loop. But that definitely goes to show, again, that it is so easy for people to leave your game and when churn happens. So as we can see, we go from 83 to 61. Now, earn a rune, I believe that happens in the second level. So really, they went from 83 to 57. Into the unknown, I believe that is the hell, getting into hell there, which that is a few levels later. So it did, in a way, it did stabilize relatively early. Yeah. I have it from the, I bought that complete edition while it was on sale, so I think I'm good there. But if we look really quickly, I just want to make sure there's no other spikes. So the game, we could argue it's stabilized either at, let's see, 61, but that is not a completion achievement. So it went from 83 to 57, and then 57 to 52. So I did say that we need to wait for it to go no more than, I would say, like 6 or 7% drop. So we'll say that it's stabilized maybe at 57%. So let me get we'll put that up there. So that means that, well, we'll round it up. So it's stabilized at 58, which means that it churned 42% of its player base very quickly in. So 42% churn and stabilized at 58%. So we keep going down here. We can see upgrading. Now the thing about Doom, at least Doom 2016, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of progression-based achievements. Some of these are just going to happen as you go through it. Glory kill all common enemy types in the campaign. You're going to do that just through the general play of it. Getting the BFG, getting upgrades, shoot until it dies. I don't recognize that achievement. I think that could be a boss fight. And as we keep going down, thorough shopper, complete all the challenges. And what we're seeing is that once it's stabilized, it really didn't lose all that much in terms of people. So you can see that it's definitely, to the FPS fans who bought Doom 2016, once they got into it, they kept going. So we can see that they got to 33.7. Again, we'll round this up to 34% who beat the game. And then in order to calculate the core base, we're going to take 34 divided by 58. Give it the old times by 100. And it comes out to 57. Oh, I'm sorry, 59% if we round up as a core base. And that is actually really good. For those of you who are new watching, the goal of any games, you want low churn, high stabilization, and then a high clear rate. Because what this tells us is the higher the churn means that a lot of people quit a game before they could even really experience it or, get into the core gameplay loop. And that's the amount of people who bought your game that you cannot count on as a fan base or as, people who are going back to it. Stabilization rate is the rate in which people got the game. These are the ones who are going to be more or less likely to buy your next game or be fans. And then, of course, the clear rate are the people who got all the way through it, and they are going to be your most hardened supporters. They're the ones that you will 100% probably see in your next game or the next one in the franchise. So almost 69, or I'm sorry, almost 60% got through the game, where we can consider them the core base. And that is really good. And one second, I'm just hearing some noise. Let me close the door. There we go. So now if we keep going, because we want to see just how far people got. So another thing that if we do look at kind of Doom Eternal, you can see that some of the lowest rates in this game are multiplayer key or coin to that. So 14 or 16% of the people who played Doom actually won a multiplayer match. And this is something that's very telling, that the people who bought Doom didn't buy it for multiplayer, or at least the majority of them did. And when/if we look at Doom Eternal, you're going to see this trend very readily in terms of their battle mode. Fully upgrade. And again, one of the reasons why we don't count kind of collectible achievements or, completionist achievements is that they are very much for your hardened fan base. Most people, as you can see, don't care about getting 100% of everything. A lot of people didn't play the snap maps feature, bonus lives, complete everything. And yeah, very few people beat this on Ultra Nightmare, or even just play through one level in. Well, it's in both Doom and it's in Doom Eternal in terms of multiplayer. Complete a track challenge, complete. And as you can see, this is probably one of the reasons why the whole snap map feature was removed from Doom Eternal. Is that 1.3% of the people who bought the game even bothered to use it. It could be a cool feature on its own, but I think it's one of those cases like it's the opposite of Mario Maker. Where Mario Maker, it really is about being all creative and then playing the levels is the bonus. In Doom, it's about playing the levels with the character or the level creator being, secondary to that. First, and again, you can see just how little people cared about multiplayer. And again, this is one of the things you have to be aware of as a developer in terms of your single player and multiplayer communities. That when you try to combine the two, oftentimes one becomes the focal point. With Doom, it's single player. With Call of Duty, it's multiplayer. And what usually ends up happening is that one of these modes becomes the focus, and the other side just kind of gets nothing, or it's not really going to be seen all that much. And you have to be careful about it, because if you're trying to market to two or more different groups, if you're not supporting them equally, you're going to have churn or people annoyed. Yep. And again, this is one of the advantages of this show, is that the proof is kind of in the pudding. That, you can take a Doom fan to multiplayer, but that doesn't mean they're going to play it. Now, of course, if we looked at a Call of Duty game, I would imagine these achievements would be reverse, with more people getting the multiplayer achievements and fewer people getting the single player. And we'll need to pick, I guess, a Call of Duty game at some point to check out. Now, another thing that I find interesting is that they combine all the completions for the difficulty settings into one achievement. So we can't see at a glance how many people beat the game on, easy, how many beat it on Hurt Me Plenty, and so on. And I do think that difficulty settings are a great consumer feature. And they do tend to, I think, get more people through a game. Even though I'm not personally a fan of them, I'd rather have the difficulty be intrinsically built into the game. But as you can see, it still retained over half the people who stuck around with it to play it. And that is definitely a success in my book. I would say if you can get a core base of at least 50%, I would say that's a thumbs up. Now, in terms of stabilizing, I would like to see, I think, 70 to 80% stable. I think that is fantastic. So, the lessons that we can learn from Doom 2016. One is that even though they did a lot to kind of reboot it, they still lost a lot of people. And this is a question for those of you watching this live or recorded who quit Doom somewhere between, completing the first mission and getting to hell. What stopped you? What was kind of the main thing that just you threw up your hands and said, I don't want to play this game anymore? I would like to think that maybe the level of action could have proven a little too much. Like, this was again before the likes of Doom Eternal, obviously, and Ultra Kill. And those were FPSs that were really designed around, that always on kind of approach to combat. It's not like a Call of Duty or a cover-based shooter where you stand around, poke out, shoot an enemy, go back in, reload, poke out, and so on. Doom, it's basically about, are you running yes/no? If no, you're going to die. And I liked it. And I liked it even more in Doom Eternal. But it is such a different experience. I think a lot of people who were kind of trained on the likes of Call of Duty, Battlefield, and the slew of color-based shooters just said, this is just completely against how I play these games, and I don't want to do it. And to Pony's comment about not doing multiplayer, yeah, and that's understandable. I didn't do multiplayer. I beat Doom and Doom Eternal on Nightmare all the way through. Maybe because I'm a weird masochist. I don't know. It's no Halo. And I think that's another interesting point, that if you're going to do multiplayer in today's market, you really have to invest in it. As in, multiple maps, multiple forms of progression. You really have to, I think, in a way, kind of compete with Call of Duty in terms of the features and elements in those games if you want to retain a multiplayer base. And as we've talked about on many of our shows here, if your game is not multiplayer focused from minute one of starting it, you're kind of on a countdown clock of people going to quit it because they're going to try multiplayer. Oh, I can't find anyone, so I'm going to quit. Somebody new joins and goes, hey, maybe I want to play multiplayer. Oh, 3-hour wait time to find somebody. I'm not going to do it. Quit. And then there's nobody left. And yeah, the whole esports argument, that's definitely a topic at some point that we can discuss more. But I do want to. I'm not sure we can really do it. I would love to look at the completion rates of a fighting game. Like a Street Fighter or MK11 or Injustice. But I don't know if there's enough there that we can get too much feedback on. Nobody plays, and then they quit, and then more people join, but they can't find anyone, so then they quit. And then we have the whole Evolve situation. And that is not good. Now, again, if your game is single-player focused, there's content for them. But if you're trying to go all in on multiplayer, and nobody's around, you are kind of sunk. Now, another thing before we move on to RE7, that, again, I want to point out about kind of the 100% achievements. Fully upgrade, get all the weapon mods, fully upgrade this. That even if those elements are important or they help you out when playing, most people are not going to care about that. And again, we can see that with how low these achievement rates are. And that is kind of good in a weird way. You don't want to balance your game on somebody's going to get every health, armor, ammo upgrade, every perk, every power up. Because if you do that, then you're going to run that issue of the difficulty being over for people who didn't get that and feeling punished. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Ancient Gods DLC for Doom Eternal had such high churn. Because it's basically saying you need to be this good to beat Doom Eternal. Now you gotta be this good to beat the Ancient Gods 1 and 2. And I hope you mastered every single element, because we're going to hit you with everything from the first 20 seconds of playing that DLC. And I think that is really all that I have to say about Doom 2016. I do, like I said, I want to cover Doom Eternal at some point. But the thing about this show is that we need to wait for the majority of the consumer base to have already gotten the game. Hopefully there's no music playing because I have my I'm not wearing my headset right now. So Doom Eternal was released in 2020. It's still too new for us to cover it for the show. Oh dear God. You think that's anything? I think Binding of Isaac has like 600 achievements right now, or even more. So I would say maybe in 1 year, if we're hopefully still doing this show, we will cover Doom Eternal then. Because I would say at least 2-year minimum, 3 years preferred, before we can really examine the completion rates. Now we can of course examine churn, because churn is kind of universal, but to get the full picture, we do want to wait for that. And I think that's everything. Again, the beauty about doing these shows is that they're going to be very quick, but then they get cut into nice viewer-friendly videos for everyone here to enjoy. So with that, let's switch gears to RE7. Oh, but before we do that, I need to reset the grading. And again, the joy about being able to edit this stuff is that nobody watching the recordings gets to see it. Alright, so with that, let's turn to RE7. This is the one that I'm kind of more interested in. RE7, of course, is not only the soft reboot of the Resident Evil franchise, it's also just a complete change in terms of what Resident Evil was for the longest time. And I remember personally not really caring about RE7 when it was first announced. I thought, oh, they're just going to rip off Amnesia or Outlast and call it a day. But as word of mouth began to spread and some really great demos and marketing that Capcom did, people got excited about it. Now, as an interesting point, fewer people reviewed Resident Evil than they did Doom. And let me just bring that back up really fast. Yeah, almost 98,000 reviews of Doom compared to just over 33,000 reviews for Resident Evil 7. But one of the points about the show is that we care about the consumer base, not so much about the number of people who bought it. Well, unless we're talking about a game that only got like 20 sales, then that's a different story. So let us take a look and see if the reboot of a franchise that was already part of a niche genre actually succeeded. And before we do that, as an interesting aside, I just want to see really fast. Did Resident Evil 6 get more reviews? No. So we know already that 7 did beat out 6 in terms of that regard. Yep, and I do agree with Foreign there. And unfortunately, that is one limitation of the show, is that we can only look at it on games and on platforms that we get full, clear, and achievement rates on. And I don't know if anyone could actually check into this for me, or maybe I'll do this after the show, if there's an easy way to spot clear rates on the PlayStation 4 or 5 or whatever. Because if it is, we could pull them into it. So let's take a look. So on the positive side, at least more of the fan base cleared the opening mission compared to Doom. Or a little bit more, actually. So, 83.7. Actually, wait a minute. 84? No, I think that's like almost like even with Doom. Hold on. That would be funny if 83.8. Okay, so literally Doom was 0.1% more people beat the opening map of Doom than they did Resident Evil 7. Obtain some by closely examining. And again, like, these are things you're going to just do by starting the game and playing it. So we go from 83. Close a door as an achievement. Nice. Then we go to 74. 73. Complete the Mia. So it's looking like, however, that there is more churn to RE7 than there was at Doom. As we go from 73 to 70, and then we go down to 62. And these are just kind of like bonus achievements. They're not really progress. Maybe can't catch me, you ain't getting away. So, really, if I wanted to be friendly or nice, we could say 62.6%. If we wanted to be technical, it would be 60% as a stabilization, because this is a major progression achievement. That is clearing the entire... I know, that's kind of scary there. Because, I mean, if you're playing as Ethan All Hands Winters, you're going to be blocking a lot in that game. Master unlocking. So, what did I say with Doom? I said it had 58. Oh no, I think I said 62. So I did include that. So to be fair, we will say 63% of stabilize, which would be 37% churn. So still relatively high stabilization. And like I said, if it's above 60, I would say that's okay. We would like stabilization to be maybe 70 to 80%. So we keep going down in the bag. Unlock the secret in the old house. So that would have been... I think that's Marjorie level, or the first Marjorie fight. And then 50%. Now, here's something that's a little interesting. These two achievements are very widely spaced in terms of where they are in the game. If you're going to beat this, you then have to go back into the normal house, get the 2 keys, and then go... If you're escaping the Baker family home, that would be beating the Jack fight all the way there. Now, one thing that I do find that's very interesting, once it's stabilized, you can see that there is very little drop-off as we go down. Like, going from 61.8 to 60.3, like, that is really damn good. All right, thank you, Pony. And then 60.3 to 60.1. Like, if you can go from like tenths of percentages down in terms of churn, your game is doing really fantastic. I'm also surprised, honestly, so many people got through the ship. Because the ship section is a pain. And I really don't like that section in terms of getting through it. But there are a few things to keep in mind. Resident Evil 7 came before Resident Evil 8. So people wanted to see this game all the way through. And this is actually, I think, really stand out from RE7. That despite, the annoyance of the ship and getting through it, they only lost 6/10 more people to then see the game all the way through. Now, end of the night, I believe. I don't recognize that achievement. That could be from one of the DLCs. So, what we can say, however, is that 47% of the player base, or 47%, made it through the game all the way. Let me pull that up here. And if we divide 47 by 63, we get rounded up 75% of the fan base clearing RE7, and that is fantastic. I would say anything higher than like 60 is really damn good. So again, what that tells us is that the game did lose 37% of the people who bought the game. But those who stuck with it, who I'm assuming are predominantly Resident Evil and survival horror fans, really kept playing it. And to have a core base of 75% meant that despite the issues, Capcom definitely did something right with RE7. Now, what is interesting to note, again, is that this is for clearing the game on easy. So what that tells me is that a lot of people really didn't want to play this on, or they really want to just focus more on the story rather than the challenge of the game. And then, of course, that dropped down by 10%. Who cleared the game on normal. I believe these ending plus achievements were from the DLC. Now we keep going down. Complete Nigh Hero. So this was kind of the first major DLC that was released. And you can see quite a bit of a drop off, going from 37 to, we'll round this up to 19. And again, I think that is kind of the nature of like DLC and post-game support like that. That if you release content that takes place after the game is done, or you're expecting people to come back to a game, more often than not, they're probably not going to do it. But I would certainly put like this group into, the super fans, the ones who want to see everything. I'm surprised so few people actually tried this one. Four-hit combo, we have End of Zoe, Elite 21. And yeah, like these are again the bonus, what was it, the banned footage DLC. Get the true ending in Daughters. Now, this is what I did. Complete the game on Madhouse. And that was a whole lot of a challenge. But what I find interesting, that I really enjoyed Madhouse in terms of what they did with that difficulty. And unfortunately, it seems like only 6% of the player base actually managed to see what it had to offer. And when we look at RE8 at some point, we'll have to compare and contrast it with Village of Shadows difficulty, because I felt that was worse design compared to Madhouse. Get all the files, get complete happy birthday. And yeah, you can see again that survival mode and even, like the survivors, like that kind of content, while it is enjoyable to play, not a lot of people of the overall fan base really want to do it. I would still like to see them do more of that mode, the raid mode, from Revelations 2. The Extreme Challenge, the Survival Plus. I don't think I did Ethan Must Die mode, so that was even more of a hardcore. Complete Not a Hero. Professional, I think, was the harder mode out of that DLC. Again, S rank. And again, you can see just how few people actually cleared, the advanced achievements of post-game DLC. And I think if they do release DLC for RE8, we may see similar numbers of that, of people not really wanting to come back to a game they finished to see more content to it. But overall, what we can kind of glean from RE7 is that for being kind of the return to horror for Capcom and the franchise, it kept people going. While I don't think it was as much of a commercial success as I think Capcom wanted out of it, it still was critically well received, and as you can see by the fans, a lot of people who bought this game enjoyed it enough to see through it all the way to the end. And with a 75% core base, is really fantastic. But it is interesting to me, again, how so few people didn't even get something like block an enemy attack. We still had churn in that one, which is kind of funny. Destroy Mr. Everywhere statue. But if we kind of, again, count progress above all else, that 60% did manage to clear kind of the first quarter of the game. And that is seeing, all what the core gameplay has to offer, beating Jack both times. So that is really great. And again, once it stabilized, there really wasn't a lot of churn going forward. Maybe dropping down, 4% here, 3% there, and that is acceptable. What we don't want to see, again, is above, I would say, 7%, 10%, 20%, sometimes 60% churn, and that kind of thing. Watch all the videotapes, which I think this would be something that everyone who would be playing the game casually would have done. But what we can also see again, though, is that there is a benefit to having difficulty settings in games. And maybe even more so in horror games, where a lot of that experience is about getting scared and not, worrying about enemies two-shotting you. Which, if you're playing on Madhouse, the four-legged molded would have two-shot you on that difficulty if you didn't block right. And they were just nasty to fight. But again, we can see again, tracking these completion rates, that as it gets harder, less people are going to stick with the game. 47 to 37, and then from 37 all the way down to 6. But again, one of the things to keep in mind excuse me, is that Madhouse is New Game Plus, or just New Game. You cannot start RE7 on Madhouse difficulty. You could, if you bought the DLC in RE8, start on Village of Shadows, but I would highly recommend against that, because you really need to understand the flow of the game and how things play out if you want to have a chance of beating it on that difficulty, as anyone who played RE8 like that can certainly attest to. We have Dead by Dawn, and again, these are just some of the bonus challenges, the additional DLC. And how many people beat End of Zoe? That's just complete non-terror, complete extreme challenge. Because if so few people beat, oh, here it is. 10% beat End of Zoe, so that means only 10% saw the greatest moment when you picked up the power glove and started punching a molded with it, or power bombing the bosses in that DLC. And again, we can see where, when we look at Doom 2 Resident Evil, that when you have additional content that is separate from the core gameplay, fewer and fewer people are willing to commit to it. In Resident Evil 7, it was survival mode and the DLC. In Doom 2016, it was the multiplayer and the creative play mode. So if we compare the two in terms of overall clear rates, let's see, where was it? Just saw it. Complete. Okay, here. So 33.7 beat Doom 2016. And I just lost it. Here it goes. 47% beat Resident Evil 7. So Resident Evil 7, in terms of success with its player base, was higher than Doom. And again, I think part of that is also the gameplay loop. Doom is far more strenuous to play compared to Resident Evil 7. Both games, though, did really well. And again, this was to be expected because they both got sequels. And ultimately, to begin to wrap up this week's kind of double episode, that both games, in terms of being soft reboots, resonated with new and returning fans, and were able to modernize the gameplay while cutting out some of the elements that didn't work. With Doom 2016, the introduction of the glory kill system, and just kind of getting back to that older, more arcade-like gameplay worked with them. While Resident Evil 7, kind of borrowing a page or a lot from Amnesia and Outlast with the first-person perspective, slower-paced design, brought back a lot of people who were put off by the more action-heavy, Resident Evil 5 and 6 design. And as we've said, as a spoiler alert, this would also carry through to Doom Eternal and Resident Evil 8, that when we cover them, probably in a year's time, we'll be able to see just how much of the fan base retained. Because one of the things that's very interesting is that when we look at sequels, that oftentimes sequels have less churn and higher stabilization, because you're kind of bringing all the people who bought the first game back, and they're more, accustomed to the challenges of that franchise. But I think with that, we'll wrap up this week's stream. Again, these are meant to be shorter streams, and we picked two very interesting games. So I'd like to thank everybody who watched these either live or recorded. If you'd like to vote for what will be the next stream / double or next two games for me to cover, be sure to check out our Patreon link down below, as anyone who supports the channel will be able to put a vote to it. Be sure to join our Discord if you'd like to continue these discussions. And like I said, if you want to watch these shows live, I do them Tuesdays starting around 4:30 p.m. ET here on the channel. do all the liking, smashing, licking, whatever you want to do with all the buttons here. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until our next show, everybody, take care.